Two Kids and a Career is a production of Jill Devine Media.
You have 5 kids. Can we go through their ages and their names if you haven't forgotten them already?
Yeah. You know what? I tend to call them all Buddy. Hey, Buddy. Come here, Buddy. Boys, girls, doesn't matter. I even call the dogs Buddy because I have 3 dogs as well.
Oh my gosh.
Everybody's Buddy.
Evoke Creative is a proud sponsor of Two Kids and a Career. They help small business owners like me brand with purpose and market with intent. The ladies at Evoke Creative will help make your digital presence known. Learn more at evokecco.com. That's evokecco.com. Hi there, and welcome to Two Kids and a Career. I'm Jill Devine. As an entrepreneur, wife, and mama, the daily grind of trying to build a business while taking care of kids and trying to maintain a healthy connection with my hubby, it's a lot. With this podcast, you're going to hear candid conversations with other moms, parenting experts who can share their knowledge and insight, or you'll just hear me rambling to get it all out. There's going to be tears, there's going to be laughter, but most importantly, there will be support. Take a listen and connect with me so we can grow and learn from one another. This is Two Kids and a Career. This is actually going to be, I believe, a very funny conversation for a very serious topic because that's how my guest rolls. And this is so exciting. For the first time ever in Two Kids and a Career, I have 2 childhood friends, I can say, as guests. So earlier, and it's unfortunate, the first guest that I had on, back to Gina and the discussion with her husband about mental illness and his suicide. And I think probably, Mackenzie, that maybe that opened the door for you to email and say, hey, because we're all part of this. I know you listened to the episode, but this tight-knit group that even though we don't see each other every day and we don't talk every day, hell, not even every month, we still all are there for one another. So let me introduce you to Mackenzie Siders. We went to junior high and high school together, and now we're just trying to be adults, right?
Right. Not successfully.
So again, when I talked about this with Gina, if you do know Mackenzie and you know us from our school days or you went to school with us, you definitely know that this is going to be a fun conversation because Mackenzie, just let me read this. I know you're not doing a lot of blogging right now, but Mackenzie at one point was blogging a lot, and her bio says, Mackenzie is a stay-at-home mom to 5 beautiful, hysterical, annoying as sometimes kids, insert the F word there. She worked so super hard in her 20s to earn an MBA only to retire and become her kid's bitch. Now she spends her days dashing into the fray and taking power naps. That's you, Mackenzie.
That
and I
is
love
so
that
very
you're
accurate.
honest and real. It's amazing. This is going to be fun. And I am smiling because I know that you are going to take this serious topic we're going to talk about and make it a little lighthearted and then also be serious. But I don't want to step on your toes. I would like for you to just go ahead and talk about what led you to send an email to me and what you want to talk about.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about Autism Awareness Month, which is in April, and I thought, maybe I could come on your podcast at that point, and you wanted to do it sooner, which of course I will talk about autism awareness any chance I can get. I really feel like it's important to try to normalize how we see our spectrum kids and, help people feel comfortable approaching them, speaking with them, and understanding, what it is that makes kids on the spectrum different and what their limitations are, what their gifts are. I constantly run into people who don't understand why my child is behaving a certain way. And I always use that as an opportunity to try to teach and invite them into our world and kind of show them how I help my kids through these situations. And I've really been universally met with sympathy, understanding, or at least attempted understanding, empathy, and people I think really appreciate that instruction, that awareness, that hey, this is how we do things. So just as a quick example, when I'm at the pool with my children over the summer, my youngest son Charlie, he will hit, and this summer he really was into touching girls' butts. So I'm like underwater with his little floaty belt on, and then the girls look around, and I'm like right there. I'm like, oh no, buddy. And so I will come up behind Charlie and I will kind of pull him back toward me, and I will apologize. I will say, I'm so sorry. My son has autism. He's really just trying to get your attention. He's just not sure how to do it the right way. And just then, the annoyance, the like what the hell just happened to me,
Right.
it just kind of melts away. And so then I prompt Charlie to apologize, and we have this exchange. So I'm constantly looking for those opportunities to kind of run interference, and help those folks just feel more comfortable interacting with our special kids.
You have 5 kids. Can we go through their ages and their names if you haven't forgotten them already?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
do. I tend to call them all buddy. Hey, buddy. Come here, buddy. Boys, girls, doesn't matter. I even call the dogs buddy because I have
Yeah.
3 dogs as well.
Oh
It's
my
just
gosh.
everybody's buddy. So yeah, I have, starting from the top, I have Spencer, and he is actually, oh my God, he is graduating from college
Oh,
in
wow.
May. I know. Honestly, I just can't even believe it. It's really weird, but awesome to have an adult child. But I still buy all of his like underwear and socks and stuff. So he's not quite like off my teat. Oh, can I say that?
Yes, I'll let that slide.
Okay, so I had Spencer before I was married, and then my husband and I got married, and he says we opened up a packet of instant family and we added water because we had 4 kids in 5 years and no multiples, no multiples. So people are like, oh my gosh, you're so brave. And I'm like, no, this is the stupid thing to do. This is inappropriately spaced children. So we had a daughter, Annalise. We call her Anna. And then 15 months later, we had another daughter, Maggie. And so they're 12 and 11 now. And then I got knocked up on maternity leave with Maggie. I'm saying that on a podcast. I really am. I'm doing it. And so then Hayden was actually born 2 weeks shy of Maggie turning 1. So they are Irish twins.
Oh.
And you know what? And I have to tell you, well, I'll tell you that in a second. But then Charlie, Charlie was came about 3 years later, and it was just utter chaos.
I
It
can
was,
only imagine.
if you go back and you look at the pictures for me in the hospital, I had scheduled C-sections with all of them because they were, mooses. But after Anna, I'm 30 years old. I just had a 9.5 pound baby. So she basically took everything with her, and I looked thinner, than before I got pregnant. And I'm dreamy, and I'm in this like lacy nightgown. And, I just look so dreamy and so amazing. You fast forward to Hayden. So 27 months later, no, not even. Is that, yeah.
Oh, too
27
too soon.
20 yeah, 27 months later, 2 babies later, I looked like I had been rode hard and hung up wet. I mean, I had deep purple circles under my eye. I mean, the fetuses took everything. They took everything. I lo I lost a whole year in there because I had, a toddler, an infant, and I was pregnant and working, and yeah, it was so don't do that. I mean, if just a little quick PSA, birth control is your friend.
I
Use
mean,
it.
I can't even, like, handle myself at the I always think, "Okay, at 43, having young kids would be smart because, I'm mature and that." No,
Right?
I'm just more tired than ever
Mhm.
before. I don't have any patience. None of that matters. Like, no. And so I have trouble with 2. I can't imagine 5. I can't just
No,
I
yeah.
can't.
Well, you know what? People ask me all the time, "How do you do it? Oh my god." And I'm gonna be really honest. I am heavily medicated. Heavily medicated. When you talk about patience, patience comes in a bottle that says Lexapro on it. So, you gotta get it from your doctor, but just tell 'em you need some patience, and you get it from the pharmacy, and it will do you just right.
See, this is exactly what I knew would happen. I'm so glad that we're having this autism conversation in this particular way because we can make it so fun.
Yes. You know what, though? It is fun. Like, I will tell you, I do enjoy my children so much more because I am medicated, because I'm a type A personality. I'm very driven. I'm very perfectionist kind of, and that does not jive with
No.
5 kids. I mean, literally, like my daughter was putting her head in the toilet. I had another one putting cans of creamed corn all over the house. I've got dogs shedding and babies pooping their pants. And and I mean, if I wasn't medicated, I would have needed a rubber room, like
Yeah.
this. So, um,
Yeah.
but you know what though? So I have this patience. I will say that, having special needs children, um, especially like my youngest was diagnosed at 15 months, which is very young, and it's really heartbreaking, to not be able to see their trajectory.
Mm.
You have your typical children, and they're developing, and everything's going okay. And so you just, you and your husband or partner fantasize about, what your kids are going to be when they grow up. And when you have a child who has been diagnosed with special needs, that's that no longer is something that you talk about. You talk about, will this child be with me forever? Will he be able to be independent?
How old is Charlie?
Charlie is 7.
All right. So when you had emailed me, you said multiple children in your household have
Yeah.
special needs. Is that true? I
Yes.
mean, obviously it's true. You told me.
I'm not lying. I'm not lying.
No, explain that to me.
Okay, so I had Charlie, and really, for all intents and purposes, everything seemed to be going okay. Um, my daughter Maggie was late to talk. So we put her in a preschool, and when she was like 2.5, and she started talking right away. Then so because Hayden is less than a year behind her, he was kind of on that same path. He wasn't really talking either. So we put Hayden the following year in the same class with the same teacher, and he didn't start talking right away. And so the teacher, said to us, he's different than Maggie. There's something going on here. And so we weren't sure what it was. Autism was not even on the radar. But at that point, Charlie, my pediatrician picked up at our 9-month checkup with Charlie that something wasn't right. He was 9 months old. He wasn't sitting up. He wasn't, I mean, obviously he wasn't crawling. He wasn't pointing. He wasn't really babbling. Again, I just figured it was, he's the fifth child, and I've got all these other kids talking for him and moving
Mm.
him, and um, I really, wasn't that concerned. And then right before he turned a year old, um, we had First Steps come and evaluate him. And again, I'm kind of watching the evaluation and I'm still just like, well, whatever, And it's kind of crazy. I just really was not that worried about it. And I figured, if he was a little behind, so we work with him and we get him caught up. It's not a big deal. But the First Steps, diagnostician, she said that he was socially at a year old, socially around 4 months old. And so
Ugh.
that was a hard pill to swallow because I really, it surprised me. It really surprised me. So basically, when Charlie was 15 months old, First Steps, we did all this therapy and we were trying to kind of catch him up, and it wasn't happening. It wasn't working. He wasn't making progress really. And then, so I took him to a developmental pediatrician, and we spent hours there, and she ended up diagnosing him. Honestly, even at that point, I don't know if I was in denial or if I just thought he was too young, but I said, I'm not going to take this diagnosis and run with it. I'm going to spend the summer doing as much therapy and as much research as I can, and then I'm going to talk to my pediatrician in September when he has his next checkup, his 18-month checkup. And so we did all of that, and I will tell you, the moment I knew um, that he was on the spectrum, there was a therapist at my house and he was playing with her. He was finally sitting up at that point, and she was trying to get him just to like put a big chunky puzzle piece into a wooden puzzle, and he just started rocking, and then he started flapping his hands.
Mm.
And it's one of those moments that I remember so vividly, and my heart just sank, and so we had an appointment with our doctor a couple of weeks later, and he walked in and he tried to offer Charlie a high five, and Charlie flapped, and didn't do the high five. So these are kind of the things that unfolded at the same time that I was doing all of this with Charlie. My son Hayden was having a lot of difficulties in preschool. He was not really talking. When he was talking, we couldn't really understand him. Um, and he was having a lot of sensory issues, a lot of sensory seeking behavior. He was standing on his head and like watching TV in a headstand. Um, just some really kind of strange things that I, at the time, did not realize was all a part of that autism diagnosis. And so basically Hayden's trajectory was, or his path to diagnosis was drastically different because he looked and acted very much like a typical little boy, except for the language and the sensory stuff. But he was very affectionate and very lovey, and very, very smart. So we went to Disney. So Charlie was diagnosed in September, and we went to Disney. We had it planned already in November. And the two things that happened at Disney that really stuck out was Hayden couldn't handle the noise and the lights and everything else. Like when we walked into Magic Kingdom, he literally stared at the ground the entire
Ugh.
time in his stroller. And then the second thing that happened on that trip was he was 4.5. He was doing algebra problems in his head.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and my husband was like listening to him because he was kind of talking to himself. about it. And he was like, so if you know what, I can't even really remember. I just remember thinking that's not normal. And so even today, so you remember Heather Krieger, of course.
Yes.
She is the math curriculum coordinator, or she has been for a long time. And as far as I know, she's still in that position in our district, but she has actually worked with Hayden before. She's come into the classroom, and she sent me a message once. She's like, wow, his math skills are really advanced. So for Hayden, his special needs are very different. He was never very easy to put into that autism bucket. And I had to work and advocate and research, and I had to take him for my own testing, because, you know, the school can only do so much.
Right.
And then through all of that with my boys, I really it really kind of tuned me into all my kids and what all of their needs are, their special needs are. So Spencer and Anna are very typical kids. Anna, I mean, I can see that she has anxiety. We talk about it. I talk her through it. She's able to kind of control it and work through it. She's 12 too. So, show me a 12-year-old girl that doesn't have anxiety.
Right.
Maggie, though, Maggie's anxiety was really pervasive. It was, very limiting. It was encroaching in every part of her life at 6 years old. And at that time, she was also having learning difficulties and, just kind of she's the one who was putting her head in the toilet, and doing some really kind of weird, impulsive things. So, I started trying to figure out what was going on with her. And eventually, we were able to get a diagnosis of depression and anxiety. So she's been on medication and seeing a counselor for a long time, and she also has severe ADHD. She is dyslexic. And this was the one that really kind of surprised me because she's such a weird little kid. And we really just thought she was kind of a space cadet, but she's gifted. She's gifted. And I actually, when I got those IQ results, I cried. I cried
Mm.
because I thought, oh my God, like she's she's like this perfect little storm of hot mess, because gifted kids have so much anxiety. So it's not I don't know why they call it gifted, because I personally think it comes with a heck of a lot of baggage. So she had to have special testing, and so at one point I had 3 kids with IEPs in the school district and was managing all of that plus their home therapies. You know what? It made me a better person. It humbled me dramatically, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I And the reason is because, for every step of the way, I learned something about the process, about my child, about myself. And now I really just want to help other people who are in a similar situation and they just don't even know where to go. I am very fortunate that I have resources available to me, and so I wasn't on my own. I was able to reach out to people and I was able to receive help, but not everybody is that fortunate. So if there's a parent who, suspects that their child has a developmental delay or an autism, it might be on the spectrum, I want to listen to that person. I want to talk to them and I want to give them a direction to go in. I was not given that. I was given a diagnosis and then I was just turned loose.
What I'm going to explain is going to tie into 2 things that I think are very important in what you can talk to the listener about. So, in 2010, when I was in between my radio jobs, I thought I was done with radio and I started doing some sub work. And one of the things that I got a lot of sub work for was being a paraprofessional. And the best way to describe that to anyone who doesn't know what a paraprofessional is you work with the kids with special needs. What I realized when I started subbing was, and I think that you could probably attest to this, and I'll use high school because that's where I did all my subbing. I did all of it at the high school level. But when we were in school, if you had a special need, and I would say probably at that time it was more Down syndrome,
Mhm.
was probably more apparent. That those kiddos were not in the classroom. So we weren't exposed to any of that, right? Would you agree?
I agree. Yeah.
Okay. So I feel like definitely generations before us and our generation, when we do see something different and we're not used to it, it does cause us to stare. So anyway, when I started subbing, I was so happy to see these kids being included. And at the time, too, I was coaching cheer. And I remember one of the football games, a girl with Down syndrome was the honorary homecoming queen. And I asked one of my cheerleaders, I said, "Is this a joke?" And she was like, "What?" I said, "Is this a joke? Because if this is a joke, this is a very cruel joke." She goes, "No, we love her." And I said, "No," like I was getting very, very defensive. And she's
Mhm.
like, "No, no, that's not it." And it made me realize, like, okay, these kids are seeing kids that are different from them, but it's okay. And they're being accepted. So
Mhm.
I bring that up because one of the first days that I had subbed at a high school, I was in a room with kids that I was like, "What's wrong with these kids? They look completely normal." I mean, like,
Yeah.
because again, I didn't know if you had special needs, like you can look just like the rest of us. And so I was with this one girl and she wouldn't talk. She looked just like any other girl. And she wouldn't talk to me. I just thought that she had behavioral issues. And like, she was like, "Yeah, screw you. I'm not talking to you." The next day, I saw her and she decided to talk, but it
Oh.
wasn't audible. I mean, it was more like, some screeching. And then, because I had asked, I said, "Well, what? I don't understand." They're like, "Oh, she has a form of autism." And that's when I really learned, like, okay, there are so many kids, like you were saying, you have to explain why your kid's acting a certain way. There are so many people who have this going on and they wrestle with it, and we have to, as a society, learn, and we have to know and understand. So I bring that up, which also goes into the whole school thing, what you were talking about. I mean, again, having those kids be included is great, but it also presents challenges to teachers.
Sure.
Again, IEPs, tons of paperwork. I was wanting to go back to school to be a special needs teacher. And you want to know what made me not go? Because I was told there's so much paperwork. And
Yeah.
that is not a reason to not want to help kids. And that's the problem. So when you emailed me and even talking now about you're just not going to take the diagnosis, you are going to be an advocate. How do we do this? How do we make this easier for parents like you and your husband?
I think that's a great question. I anytime I try to think about how do I affect autism on a bigger level, it's really hard when you're just one person. And I personally think that it starts, at home with me. So, in my house, autism isn't a bad word. Um, ADHD, anxiety, depression, these are all things that we talk about as our struggles every day. And we celebrate our kids, their differences, their triumphs, and we identify their struggles, and we actively work on them. And so I think when you have that comfort level, starting at home, I think you will be able to live that every day. And so with every interaction that you have that understanding, you have that comfort and confidence to know how to talk to people about it, because you've thought about it. You've thought about it. How am I going to teach my child to live with this disability if I won't even, you know, acknowledge it? So many parents, I have good friends who they don't even want to acknowledge to their own families that their children are on the spectrum. And they all have their own reasons, and I respect them. I do. Um, but at the same time, I feel like it's keeping that stigma kind of, it's fueling it a little bit. I think so. So if I start with my family and I make my children comfortable with their struggles, their disabilities, and their diagnoses, I like to explain to other people, you know, don't just wait until you encounter a child with special needs to teach your children. We have YouTube now. We have all kinds of resources. You can find videos. I mean, Sesame Street, of course, has their autistic character, and you can show these videos to your children and start creating awareness and empathy at a really early age. So that would be, kind of my advice on a microscopic level. Just to acknowledge and see and understand that when kids are struggling in the classroom, I mean, Charlie has thrown pencils at other children. It's, as a parent, I'm mortified. I'm terrified he's going to hurt another child, um, and he hasn't. But my first thought is I want to reach out to, that child's parent and say, I'm so sorry. I am sorry. I don't want their child to be hurt so that my child can be in the classroom.
Right.
And so that's why Charlie has full-time, adult support or paraprofessional with him all the time, is because, he can um, slip into some of those behaviors. Hayden doesn't. Hayden and Maggie are both totally independent in the classroom, and actually neither of them have IEPs anymore. They just have, garden variety issues. Like the typical things that we're aware of it, and we've coped with it, and we've remediated a lot of it at this point. They're 10 and 11. The school is not there to cure your child. They're there to basically level the playing field. So, be reasonable with your requests, of the school, of the teachers. Try to work as a team. Be understanding. I mean, I really try to support my son's teachers, because they've got a really hard job. If you want to give money to Autism Speaks, if you want to affect change, I like to start in your community where you are. Even if it's just, I'm going to sit down and watch this video with my kids and we're going to talk about it. I've been so unbelievably touched by the number of parents who've reached out to me and said, my son is in Charlie's class and he just loves Charlie so much, and we'd love to have a play date. And
Oh.
I and these kids they're so in tune with Charlie. They're so understanding. Like, Charlie doesn't really want to engage with them very much. Charlie wants to do what Charlie wants to do. And these boys, these few boys that have kind of become his buddies, they just kind of follow him around and let him do what he's going to do.
And that's what I'm talking about when I was doing the para stuff, like how these kids are included now and accepted by their peers, and that their peers want them to help. I mean, it just warms your heart.
It really does. And so on the flip side of that, Charlie, if if you egg him on or if you suggest it, he'll say, inappropriate things. And so there was an incident at lunch once that I heard about through his para, where some boys in his class were kind of encouraging him to say some inappropriate things, and they were all laughing, right? And it was kind of described to me as bullying, and I my immediate thought was just, they're 6 and 7 years old. I mean, certainly they're capable of bullying, but is that really what's going on here? Or is it really just they don't understand? And so, that's a teachable moment. You pull those boys in and you tell them, Charlie doesn't know better. Charlie,
Yeah.
you know, he doesn't know better. You're going to get him in trouble. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I will tell you, we have an amazing principal at our school, and I just love him. He's so good. And I know he talked to those kids and they were all upset and crying, and I really do think some change was made there that day.
What do you say to me or another parent that doesn't have a child with autism or has any of those special needs right now? I mean, is there anything that you could say to us to help? I mean, I know you talk about it in your home. I mean, we
Mhm.
can talk about it in our home, but I mean, anything, any advice, anything that we should know?
That may be the one question I really don't have an answer for, because I feel like it's one of those things. It's really hard to describe. It's literally an emotional roller coaster all day, every day. So it goes from, this child has crawled into bed and is spooning me in the morning, and I am so full of joy and love, I might explode. And
Yeah.
then 2 hours later, he has pooped his pants and has dropped turdlets throughout the house, and I want to cry and eat butter straight from the package, you know. And then we get down, we get him all cleaned up, and everything's better. And we're trying to do schoolwork, and he cannot focus, and he's scripting. He's literally saying every word from the last movie he just watched. He's saying all the parts, all the voices, all the sounds, and you can't do anything until he gets all the way through it, because it's a circle, it's a cycle in his head. And then we finally we get all the way through that, and we're having afternoon snack, and we're back to he's sharing his snack with me, and we're giggling and we're watching funny videos. You know what I'm saying? Like it's literally up and down all day long. And I would say that it's very similar to regular parenthood. I know you don't have to be autistic to poop your pants. And so autism doesn't have the corner on that market, but you know we feel these things. They're really intense throughout the day. You feel joy, you feel hope, then you feel desperation and angst, and then you're like mad as hell, and then you're back to it's bedtime, he's sleeping, oh my god, nothing has ever been so angelic in all the history of the world. And then they wake up the next day having peed their bed, and what I'm
And
saying?
here we go again.
And here we go, and here we go, and here we go, which is, enter in the medicine for me. I am literally like wading through a river of urine every day. Somebody pees the bed in my house every night. And
Right.
if I wasn't medicated, I seriously, I would have pulled my hair out by now. But like, I walk into somebody's room and I'm like, oh, somebody peed in here, you know. we strip the bed, we get, they get in the shower, and we move on.
Well, I want to wrap up with saying that I will have at jilldevine.com, the show notes will include some of the resources that you'll have, but also a link to this blog that you wrote called My First Day as a Mother to an Autistic Child. And when I read it, I know I was impacted. So I can only imagine how impactful it will be to someone who does have an autistic child, or they're getting ready to maybe go in and get that evaluation or diagnosis. But I liked how you said celebrate every success, no matter how small or insignificant. If you spend your time worrying about what your child isn't doing rather than the wonderful progress he has made, autism will swallow you whole. And I just, everybody actually should read this so that we have a little bit more insight as to what happens in a household like yours.
That was one of the only serious blog posts I think I ever wrote. The other ones are like C-section farts and why I tell my kids to shut the F up.
I read that one.
Yeah. So,
Oh my gosh.
C-section farts. Well, oh, and my fat ass was another one. So yeah, that one, the autism post was just, that was so cathartic for me. All the things that I went through, I wrote that about a year after Charlie was diagnosed, and I wanted other people to know, this is how it's going to go, but it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You just keep one foot in front of the other. Relief will come in time. The relief from the constant chatter in your head.
Well, at the beginning of this episode, you did say that Autism Awareness Month is in April. So I'd like to invite you back for that so we can talk about it a little bit more, see some of the progress that's been made in, I say just a few short months, because it's really not that far away. I mean, I'm like, it's November? Okay. So yeah, I will have you back in April. And I just want to thank you for sharing this, but also just being real. And you're just connecting with so many people with just the way that, you're handling it. I mean, at least I think so.
You got to laugh. You got to keep it real. You got to wash your hands often.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That pee will get you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I would love to come back in April. And I have a lot of resources to share with you.
And you can find all of those resources at jilldevine.com. And I'm going to get to that Supermom shout out in just a minute. But first, speaking of jilldevine.com, I want to brag on Evoke Creative. The ladies behind Evoke, they are the ones that developed my beautiful website. They took the different ideas I had and the vision, and they made it come to life. So I am able to provide a way for you to get resources like Mackenzie suggested in this episode, and so much more. And I've had a lot of people come to me and tell me how much they love my website. And some of those people have contacted Evoke to help develop their website. So if you're looking for a great partnership with two incredibly talented women, you need to contact Evoke Creative, evokecco.com. That's the best way to reach them, to learn more. evokecco.com. All right, now it's time for this week's Supermom shout out, and I am nominating this week's Supermom. From O'Fallon, Missouri, you just heard Mackenzie Siders talking about the dynamics of her family. At one point, 3 of her 5 children had IEPs, and for kids to receive special education services, they need an IEP, which stands for Individualized Education Program. So the IEP, it's more than just a piece of paper. It lays out the program of special education instruction, the support, and the services that a child needs to thrive in school. Well, Mackenzie does all she can to support the IEPs and works with the schools to make sure she's doing what she can at home to help her special needs kiddos, especially Charlie. So Charlie is 7 and he's autistic, and Mackenzie, she advocates for Charlie and all individuals with autism. She wants their voices to be heard. She's doing all she can to make that happen, in addition to educating others like myself and you who may not be familiar with autism. We can all agree that being a parent is hard work, but Mackenzie faces more hurdles than most parents. I can't imagine how exhausting her days are, and I am inspired by Mackenzie's strength and her determination to do more. Mackenzie, I see you and I support you. If you would like to nominate a Supermom, it's super easy. All you have to do is email me, hello@jilldevine.com. Tell me the supermom's name, where she's from, and why you're nominating her. And that is all I need. And I would like to thank you for supporting Two Kids and a Career. Hitting play, that's support right there. So thank you. And if you feel like doing more, feel free to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. You can also follow me on Instagram at Jill Devine. Thank you again and for your support of Two Kids and a Career.